Hey guys, welcome to BricksDaily Live. So I got to start off by apologizing for last week. I don't know what happened with the audio. I can't explain it. All I know is right before we were about to go live, just about everything stopped working. And it was just like this perfect storm of like the camera wasn't working and all sorts of stuff. So hopefully we got everything taken care of today. And what I want to do is go back over just a couple of things that I covered last week that unfortunately wasn't very audible to and was basically you weren't able to follow along with it. The big thing I wanted to focus on actually has to do with focusing. Is a couple weeks ago we did in the video we did focus stacking. And a question came up of why would you do focus stacking and not just shoot with a higher or a more open aperture, or I'm sorry, not more open aperture, a higher f-stop. And there's a couple reasons for this. One of the things we need to do is, and actually it's good, we didn't quite cover some of this last week, even though it got messed up, is explain a little bit of how apertures and everything work. So with my camera, I'll show you this here. So this is a 35 millimeter camera, and what we have here is, as you can see, is the diaphragm of the lens. And what happens is, right now this is actually a high f-stop, but when it opens like that, that is actually a lower f-stop. And what's happening is, think of it kind of like the pupils of your eyes. And what happens is, the lower the f-stop, so when it's more open, you're going to have less depth of field. And so stuff is going to be a little bit blurrier. When it's a higher f-stop like this, when it's lower, or when it looks smaller, is going to actually let more, or you're going to have better depth of field. Now, what happens with the lenses are, all lenses kind of have a sweet spot. Just because a lens, let me put this back on my camera here. Just because a lens can go a whole range of f-stops and stuff like that, doesn't necessarily mean that the camera can handle it that well. And it all has a perfect setting that will work best for your camera. And sorry, I just want to make sure, get the lens put away here. So what you would do is, and the question again was, well, why not just shoot with a higher f-stop? And that can work, but what happens is you're letting more light in, and because of that, you're gonna get diffracturing that happens, and what happens then is your images actually will start becoming softer. And so if you want to maintain a sharp or a sharper, cleaner image, focus stacking is going to be really helpful for you, because you can get just the right focal depth that you want, and you can focus on different parts of the image. And then when you bring it in and do the focus stacking, it's all brought in. But there's a couple of things that you also need to keep in mind when it comes to f-stops and stuff like that when you're shooting. So like we said, each lens has like its sweet spot and stuff like that. But your shutter speed is actually impacted by your f-stop or your aperture setting. Because what's happening is your shutter speed actually determines how long the shutter's open, and that also determines how much light comes in or is blocked. And you need to have the right setting to get the amount of light that you want. And so if you use a low f-stop, which is letting more light into the shutter doesn't need to stay open as long. But if you use a high f-stop, so say you first take a photo, when you first start off, you're shooting everything, you're shooting off with like an f2. And then all of a sudden you start realizing, oh, I'm going to move this up. I'm going to go up to f8. You're going to have to adjust your shutter speed because of the difference that you're doing with the aperture. You need to keep those in mind. You need to keep in mind your shutter speed, your aperture or your f-stops, and also ISO will impact it. And so what happens a lot of times is a lot of people will sit there and they'll shoot with a really open or a high f-stop. I have a lens, depending on what I'm using, it can go up to like, you know, I can, if I wanted to, I could shoot with like an f22. But what happens then is it greatly impacts my shutter speed and also the ISO. And so I see a lot of people when they're shooting, they throw their ISO up to the highest level that they possibly can, and then they just mess around with f-stop and shutter speed. But what you need to keep in mind is all of these three things need to be used in connection with each other. Don't just set one setting up to a number that you like and then just mess with the other two. You need to find the right setting that's going to work best for the photo that you're taking. A high ISO allows you to shoot in lower light conditions, but it's going to throw in typically a lot of noise in my experience, and I don't like having a lot of noise in the photos. Again, that's just me. It makes it look a little bit grainier, and it can, and you have to go in and you have to edit it out and stuff like that. There is a time when a aperture setting will allow you to get the shot that you want, but you need to just really think about what direction you're wanting to take with your photography. So, having said that, going back, what you'll want to do is you'll want to find the f-stop that works best for the shots that you're trying to take. And with that, mess around with your settings. Don't just find one setting and say, oh, I'm going to shoot everything now with I found this one f-stop that I like. I found this shutter speed that's perfect, and from now on I'm going to shoot everything the same. Because what you need to focus on is the fact that those settings are going to change depending on the amount of lighting you have coming in, what is actually in the shot and how it's reflecting the light and how it's going to bounce around. What if you want to do a light painting and stuff like that? You have to completely shoot differently and stuff like that. So making sure you understand that just shooting wide open or with a much higher f-stop, you need to keep in mind it's going to it will actually cause some softening of the image, and you're going to wind up possibly not getting exactly what you want. If you just bring those f-stops down to what you want, and you're like, okay, this character's in focus, and then you start moving it around, focus in, move it again, focus it in again, you're able to bring those in and get that nice, sharp, clean image that you want and everything. Now, having said that, there's also nothing wrong. I do it most of the time with most of my photos, is I find I just use one shot. I'm not focus stacking all of my images and stuff like that. So hopefully that is a little bit of clarification on why you might use focus stacking versus just shooting with a high f-stop. So the other thing I wanted to just clarify is the gels and stuff like that I was talking about. So again, we just have this kind of saran wrap, and there's different colors that are available. So this one's yellow, and this will give you a nice kind of daylight effect and stuff. You can use blue, it'll give you a nice cooling effect and everything. And you can just peel it off, and you can fold it over to get the amount or the effect that you want. Again, one of the things that I mentioned in the video but a lot of this, some of the audio got messed up, is if you use anything like this, do not use it on lights that get hot, because it will melt and you'll wind up with a huge mess, smell of some burning stuff on your the bulbs and stuff like that. Only use it if you're running lights that don't get hot, such as LEDs and stuff like that. But still check with the LEDs. I've found some LEDs actually still run a little bit hot or a little bit warm. So having said that, today we are going to be continuing using the Lego Modular series. Last week we used the detective. What I'm using this week is the same as the set that I used last week, but I'm using a different part of it. These Lego modulars are just really, really cool, just because they give you different kinds of areas to shoot with. And last week we used the detective agency aspect of it. This week we're actually going to be focused in on the, there's a pool hall part of it. It's in the lower part. It's named the Highlander in the series. And I just was trying to envision, okay, where could characters from Star Wars go to relax and stuff like that. So I focused a little bit more on the Empire and stuff, and you know, I love shooting with the stormtroopers and everything like that. And I really wanted to be able to bring that in and see what we could do. So let's go ahead and jump over and see what we can get taken care of. Okay, so what we have going on here is, like I said, it's just the pool hall or the Highlander part of this Lego set. And I'm just going to get my camera locked into my tripod here. Let me move this around just so you can see a little bit. So what I've done is I've taken out the back wall and taken off the upper floors of the set. And with this, what I did was we just added in a droid back here in the back, a couple of stormtroopers just in some casual clothes, right around to the back here. Let's see if I can get that in so you guys can see it. I've added in Boba Fett and even Han Solo and Carbonite and stuff. What better to have on the wall of the pool house when you're trying to relax with your friends and stuff like that than having your latest acquisition or prize. So I love this little set. I love the fact that Lego was able to create kind of like this little pool table, and using just these little single studs for the pool balls. And so what also I did was I went in and swapped out Darth Vader's costume. Rather than him being in his typical armor, have him in kind of like an Argyle sweater and stuff like that. Just thought it would look a little bit better and everything. And the great thing about this pool set is what it came with was these golden type bars, which are the same type of bars as what's used for the lightsabers. It's just a different type of plastic and everything like that. It's not translucent and everything. So with this shot, I'm actually going to set up turn on a couple different lights. And I kind of want to light up the back because I'm shooting across and I'm going to be able to see just a little bit out of the window. And so for it, I've actually taken the top floor from this and set it down behind, and let me see if I can show you this here. So I set the top floor on the ground, and what happens is when you're shooting through the window, and because of the focal depth and everything that I have set up, it just looks like a building across the street. So that way I'm not having to use multiple sets or anything like that. It's still going to maintain the aesthetic that I want. And I have Luke and Leia walking. Don't know quite how well they'll show up in the photo. And I also added in smart car just to add a little bit more into the shot, depending on what is going to be able to be visible in the final video, or the final photo. So like I mentioned, I believe I mentioned I'm shooting with a 35 millimeter. Just so I'm getting right up close with the scene. I'm actually, as you can see, not very far away from where the camera's set up to the shot here. And I'm just going to try and get framed in so not seeing anything off to the sides or anything, just allowing the Lego themselves to cause a natural kind of framing and everything. Let's see. Now, one of the tricky things with this is because I'm shooting, I have both the Stormtroopers and Darth Vader's helmet, and he's so far back, I need to be able to shoot and still get enough definition going on with his mask and stuff, so it doesn't just look dark and blurred out and stuff. So let me just take a quick test shot here. Okay, so it's looking kind of good. Right now, for this shot, I'm actually shooting with a f8 from the aperture. And it's allowing a good amount of stuff to be in focus. So I have the Stormtrooper as the main focal area right in here. And because of the f-stop that I'm using, it's allowing Vader to be in focus, but this Stormtrooper up front is going to be a little bit out of focus and stuff. So I think that'll work pretty well. I just want him in to add a little bit of depth and everything. Let's see. Okay, and I'm also shooting with the shutter speed set at 50, and I'm worried that the helmets are getting a little bit blown out here. Okay, so the first shot that I did, like I mentioned, I have the f-stop at f8 with the shutter speed set at 50, and what I had failed to realize was my ISO was actually set at 400, so that was bringing in some more light, and so I dropped that down to just to 200, and it seems to look okay. I think it will work out a little bit better. I did change the shutter speed to 40 rather than 50, and let's double check here. So right now I can't see, I can see Luke, but I can't really see Leia. So I'm going to try and do that, fix that just a little bit. And because I knew with them I was going to be having to get them in shot or move them around easily, what I've done is I've just placed them onto a single piece here. That way I could slide them around easily. And that way it just aids me in being able to get the shot set up the way I want.
I wish I could help,
and let's see.
To the internet.
Well, for some reason Siri's think I'm talking to her. I think that'll work a little bit better. You actually see two people in the shot. So I'm just double checking on Vader's helmet here. Okay, so I've actually gone in and brought the shutter speed from 40 to 25. Hopefully that's not going to blow out their helmets too much. And I'm trying to get a little bit more definition of what would be on Vader's left side or the right side of the helmet facing us here. It's just a little bit dark in there, so I want to make sure that it's well lit and everything, so I get some of that definition going on in the final photo. And I just want to make sure that the ceiling fan here is moved where I want. Okay, so I noticed one thing here, just as I was about to finish up, is when this set came apart, or gets built, see if I can focus in on it. This area here is actually wide open and stuff. It looks like, I don't know why they did it that way, but it's quite noticeable in the shot. So I have some extra blocks that Lego pieces that I'm going to put in here to just fill that up to make it look like a full solid room. But to do that, I'm going to move up the light for just a moment. Okay, that looks a lot better now. Okay, I think that will work. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and switch back over to Photoshop and see what we need to take care of. Okay, so let's go in. We're going to go ahead and get this opened up here. Get you guys so you guys can see what's going on. So there we go. Let's open this up just a little bit. So as you can see here, we have the whole shot and everything, and what you can see going on here with the stormtrooper to the left is what I was talking about, how he's going to be a little bit out of focus and everything, which is fine. That was planned and everything. Now by default, this is just using bringing in the file with no settings applied or anything like that, and it looks a little bit dark and everything. So all the information's still here, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring up our exposure just a little bit. Let's see, and we'll keep the contrast up just a bit. And I'm going to bring the highlights down. So if I go back to where they originally were, and looking between here and the helmet, if I bring those highlights up, it's going to blow out the helmets. And if I bring that down, it's also overpowering the wall color, and it's making it not be the yellow that it was. It's actually more towards the white side of it. So we want to make sure that we bring the highlights down just a bit and everything. And if you notice, what we've talked about before with our histogram here is we're not peaking right here, which means we're not clipping off any of the white areas of the shots and stuff. So just make sure that you're watching that, which in whatever editing program that you're using, if it has an option for you to see the histogram, make sure you're looking at it. Make sure you're understanding how it works. Typically, especially with Adobe products, to the right is your lights, and to the left is your darks or your blacks and stuff. So I bring that back out. Just take a look at everything here. As you can see, there's Luke and Leia right outside, and again you can see the building through the back windows there. Last week we used a light box to shine in through, and that was mostly because the detective office is up on a higher floor, so maybe you wouldn't have any kind of buildings in the background to be seen and stuff like that. So we can go in here and make sure the stuff looks just the way we want. And we got some of the definition going on here with Vader's helmet, which is working out good. And if I want, I can actually grab a adjustment brush, and I'm going to just paint right over his helmet here, just a little bit. And we can adjust just the settings for that brush. And so we're okay with where the exposure was. So we're not going to increase that at all. But what I do want to do is see about pulling back a little bit of the shadows, just a little bit of the blacks going on in his helmet. You don't want to go too far because it's going to make it look washed out, and everything. It's going to look really weird. So all I'm trying to do is pull it back just a little bit to bring in just a little bit more of the definition, and be able to see that. So I think that works for him. And let's see here. I think that's working okay. We have the dartboard there so you can see the darts that the stormtrooper's carrying. Yeah. So I think we're looking pretty good here. Right now I'm just looking to see how much dust might need to get removed. A little bit from Vader's helmet. A little bit down here on the floor. And we'll clean up a little bit of Boba Fett's helmet there. Okay, so let's go back in and finish with some of our adjustments and everything. Okay. Going to bring up the clarity just a little bit, and also our vibrance slider. And let's see here. I'm going to go in and sharpen this, just like I typically do in all my shots. Okay, I'm also going to bring up noise reduction. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm just not a huge fan of a lot of grain and stuff like that going on in the shots. And so I want to go in and take that out and everything. The other thing I want to double check for is to see if any kind of chromatic aberration is going on. So there is a little bit. Let's see if I can bring this in so you guys can see it. So if you see this kind of coloring shift haloing that's going on, if I come into the lens correction portion of Adobe Camera Raw, Lightroom has this as well. I'm going to just go ahead and turn on remove chromatic aberration, and it removes some of that haloing that was happening. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and double check our settings here. So a lot of the settings that I have in Photoshop were recently just reset. Adobe updated all of their software this week. They even announced some news for Lightroom and stuff like that. But by updating Photoshop, it actually reverted some of the settings and stuff like that. So if you ever update and stuff like that, and you've gone in and made certain settings, like how I open up my Camera Raw files, make sure that you double check that before you go through and do anything and stuff. So everything looks good here, so we will go ahead and open this up. And there we go. So like we mentioned, we have a little bit of dust on his helmet. So I'm just going to create a new layer here, and I'm using the spot healing brush, and just going to kind of come in, and I've added in a layer, as you can see here. Let's just name this here and because I'm doing the adjustments from for one layer onto another one, up in the top I actually have sample all layers, and so some of the brushes and tools and stuff like that in Photoshop have the option to whether it takes samples from all the layers or just from the current layer or from the current layer and below. Just make sure you know which setting you're wanting to use and everything. So this one, because I'm having it pull information from the bottom layer, I need to have sample all layers turned on. Just finish going in making these edits here. And one of the things that you'll notice in this shot is, and I did this intentionally, I took off all the diffusion that I've talked about in previous things. A lot of times in pool halls and stuff like that, they're kind of known for like bad lighting, and so I wanted to have the it just kind of look like bad lighting and stuff. So just wanted those to go in and stuff. Maybe as some you know, just some tacky light fixtures and stuff like that. So and I think we mentioned cleaning up Boba Fett's helmet. Okay, let's see. Show you guys what this looks like now without any kind of distraction here. I think this kind of works. I'm wondering, let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna actually go in and add in a color lookup adjustment layer. And when I do this, it's going to bring up this dialog box over here. And I've used these before and everything. And anytime, like, Hollywood does movies and stuff like that, and they're doing their color correction and stuff like that, they're using a lot of times what's called LUTs. And what it does is it allows them to apply a color shifting that takes place. But by using that, a lot of times it applies the same effect to all the scenes and stuff like that. So if you ever watch like The Matrix and they're in The Matrix, everything kind of has a greenish tint. Other movies do stuff, or TV shows do stuff if they're trying to create like a dreamscape, or they're trying to show it's an apocalyptic kind of world. They add in these effects, these that modify the coloring because it changes your perception of what's going on in the shot. So you can kind of do that same thing here by adding in an adjustment layer. So by default, and I normally have a whole lot more of a selection that I've downloaded and also created from previous years, but again, since Photoshop updated, it's taken those out, so I'd have to just go back in and reinstall them and everything. But as you can see with the photo here, if I just turn on, say, let's go for a pretty stark contrast here. I do tension green. All of a sudden it gives that whole shot kind of a greenish tint and everything. If I do teal orange, and you can start seeing what it starts doing with the colors and the contrasts and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of different options that you can choose from. This one's obviously makes it a lot darker. Moonlight, not a huge difference between the last one. If you do late sunset, it kind of gives it more of a warm, darker feeling. Let's see here. Show you a couple other options here. So you can see how that looks, like a bleach bypass. It just really overpowers everything that's going on. Really, you can see all of a sudden we've lost all definition between the helmet and the wall here. So just be really careful with which settings you're using and everything. So let's see. Kind of like this one here. It gives it kind of a more of a muted kind of color. It doesn't allow stuff to go too high or anything like that. I think that looks pretty good. And what I would just want to do now is you can see the adjustment layer here that was added in. And what I want to do is add in a new layer, but I want to drag this below, because anything that I add in, I want it to have that same kind of color shift and everything. So I want to make sure that it stays on top. One of the things I just thought of was the fact that didn't get the lightsaber lit up here. So I'm just going to come in and paint with just a near white. So good way of looking at that is you can look at your hue, saturation, brightness settings right in here, and if it's just 100% white, it would look like that. So I'm going to bring that down just a bit, and just because I don't want just stark bright white and stuff, so we're going to do about a 98% there. Click OK. And we're just going to go in and paint. Okay, so and adding in the lightsaber effect we've discussed in previous videos. But what I'm going to do is just go in and paint this area with this kind of white color. Get that all situated. Okay, and with that, just going to go up to my effects palette, and I'm going to click on one of my lightsaber settings that I already have preset. And because I have that as a preset, when I go into double click on and make the modification to change it from green to red, it's only going to show the outer glow and stuff. So normally when you open up your layer styles and everything, your left sidebar here, it's going to have all of these options: blending options, bevel and emboss, contour, texture, stroke, inner shadow, and so forth. But for this, we're just messing with outer glow. I'm going to come in and I want to pick a very vibrant red. I'll click OK. Now, because of Vader's lightsaber here, we're going to go in and add just a little bit of reflection going on with his helmet. Not too much. We don't want to overdo it. Okay, so now that I got those paint strokes in, I'm just going to come up, blur that out. Not too much. Right about in there. And we're going to set this to, it's kind of a hard light. Create a layer mask, and I need to paint out part of what's going on here. Make sure I get a nice soft brush. So I just want to follow kind of the texture or contour of Vader's helmet. We're going to turn this down just a little bit. We don't want it to be too much and stuff, so. And let's add in, we're going to do an overlay. And for this, I actually want to select a yellow. Let's see what this looks like. I want to kind of have light coming off with the light fixture up here. Let's see what happens if we just add in some darkening to the shot a little bit, just with the gradient tool, and I'm going to use a gray. Let's see. So I'm actually having the gradient go from gray to transparent. With the layer blend mode set to multiply. Okay, so I think that's working. Don't you guys see that here? And I think that is going to work pretty well for the shot that we're going for and everything. So let's see here. So I had somebody, gonna just pull this up real quick here. Had somebody reach out on Instagram asking how I took a ghostwriter shot and made him look like he was glowing. I did that just the same way did with the light bulb up here. Give it kind of a glow effect where stuff is coming through, and that layer I just painted with the color that I wanted. If it's like orange and stuff like that, a lot of times I'll paint with white. For this, I actually wanted kind of a incandescent bulb yellow kind of glow, so I painted with the layer set at overlay. I painted using yellow. Let me open up the ghostwriter shot that or a ghostwriter shot that I've done that's highlighting the same kind of effect. So here, what I was able to do is I just went in and I painted over the top using another layer and with the overlay and stuff to give that same kind of effect. So I find it very useful for creating a glowing type of thing where you still want the items below to come through in the shot, and I think that works out in this one here for the light bulb. And actually, let's tweak that just a little bit. I think that'll work. Okay, so I think the shot worked out pretty well. Some of the things, again, you just want to make sure that you're watching your highlights and your shadows and stuff like that, and not getting a lot of peaking or anything like that and clipping that might occur. And also then when you go in and you edit, make sure that you're not overcompensating and you're over editing and you're causing things to get blown out and the information becoming lost in the shot. So just to recap, I want to apologize again for the video last week. I wish I could redo the audio just for that video, but I'm not able to. But hopefully I was able to answer the questions that weren't audible in that video, in this one. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Reach out to me in any way you want. Comment reach out on BricksDaily.com or like us and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/BricksDaily. And make sure that you like and subscribe this video. And also if you can share it and stuff like that, because there's a good chances that you have friends that take photos themselves and stuff like that, and they might be able to learn some stuff, and maybe they have some questions on how they might be able to do something. One thing I wanted to mention, and again going back to the conversation earlier about using your f-stop and adjusting your shutter speed and everything like that, is if you shoot at a much higher f-stop, you have to make the corrections and stuff like that to compensate and stuff, because the higher f-stop, the shutter speed the shutter has to stay open longer. You have to make sure, please make sure that you're shooting with a really good steady tripod. A lot of the tripods that come with a kit or anything like that, they're not going to have a whole lot of, it's not going to be very rigid. And if you're finding that you're shooting at a really high f-stop and everything and stuff is still just really coming out blurry, check your camera instructions, find out how you can do a timer release to where you're not actually clicking the button, because just you clicking the button and the amount of time it takes for that shutter to stay open, you can move just a little bit, and if your lens is moving here just a little bit, it's really going to change what's in focus on the other end and how much it blurs and stuff like that. Think about when you use like a telescope and it's just on its really high setting and you're looking across a valley. If you move that microscope or that telescope just a little bit on your end, it looks like it's swinging wildly across a canyon or something like that. So just make sure that you're shooting with a really good tripod. Double check your equipment and stuff like that. My recommendation is, for the photography that you're doing, get a camera that works. I've mentioned it before, I'm shooting with a Nikon D50. The camera I think was discontinued like 5 years ago, I think in 2012, I think. The camera still works great. So rather than investing a whole lot of money in a camera, I take that money and I turn around and use it and invest it in better glass or lenses. You'll notice a huge difference in your photography if you move away from the stock lens that comes with your camera, especially if you're using like an entry-level DSLR such as a Canon Rebel and stuff like that. They're putting in it for a lot of stuff. It's just an all-purpose general lens, but it's also on the lower end. It's not a high-end all-purpose lens kind of thing, because they're trying to get their money's worth and stuff like that. So if you can, invest in some lenses. Most of my shots I use 2 prime lenses, the 35 millimeter and my 185. I think it's 185. Yeah, so I'm sorry, 85. I don't know why I said 185. It's a great lens. It's really changed stuff. But also, you don't have to shoot with the DSLRs. When I first started taking photos, I used stuff with my iPhone and everything. Phone photography is just, it's going leaps and bounds and stuff like that. What Apple's done with their new iPhone is great. Google's new Pixel camera, the quality and stuff like that, I haven't seen a whole lot, but from what I understand, it's phenomenal for what you're able to do with a smartphone and stuff. So use the equipment that you can, and focus the money on getting other stuff that's going to help your shot. Don't just think you need to go out and buy a high-end camera, because just buying a high-end camera is not going to help unless you know how to use it, and also how you know how to actually take shots and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. Again, please like and follow us and subscribe. If you're able to, share this on Facebook and stuff like that. Also, head over to BricksDaily.com to check us out. And if you want to be featured in an Under the Macro review, let us know. We're always looking for people to feature and who want to be highlighted and stuff like that. There's no cost to you and everything. So just reach out to us like on Facebook and let us know that you want to be featured. And also follow us again on Facebook and everything. And when we go live and upload new videos, you'll be the first to know when those are available to you. Any questions, shoot us a comment down below, and we will get back with you as soon as we can. We want to make sure that you find these videos helpful and everything. So I'm going to leave you with this, the final image here again. And hopefully you guys found this video helpful. And until next time, I am losing my mind here. I needed to just announce next week's episode might air a little bit differently, or it might get bumped. I'm actually going to be traveling to Texas towards the end of next week. So right at the time when I'm normally shooting these videos, I'm going to be in Texas. But all of my equipment to be able to shoot live is staying here. So don't want to have to pay all the luggage fees and stuff like that just to get this stuff out there. So if I'm able to, the next week's video, if I'm able to get it shot, will actually be earlier in the week rather than later in the week and stuff. So if you have any questions, let us know quickly, so that way it'll help me know if I need to get that video definitely up before I leave and stuff. So with that, hope you guys found everything helpful. Again, here's the final shot, and we will catch you in the next episode.